Reading is from Genesis chapter 27, beginning in verse 30. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, Esau his brother came in from his hunting. He also prepared savory food, and he brought it to his father, and he said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I'm your son, your firstborn, Esau." Then Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me, even me also, O my father." But he said, "Your brother came with guile, and he has taken away your blessing." Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Then he said, "Have you not reserved a blessing for me?" Isaac answered Esau, "Behold, I've made him your lord, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants. With grain and wine I have sustained him. What then can I do for you, my son?" Esau said to his father, "Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father." And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. May the Lord bless this reading of his word. Please be seated. Picture with me family campground alongside a little stream, picturesque, mountains, pine trees, family having a weekend reunion with barbecue pits fired up, RVs set up. The grandmas and the great aunts have boxes of photos and they're passing them around and people are becoming reacquainted. At the end of the weekend, they worship together around the campfire and tearfully say their goodbyes. Sort of an idyllic picture, sort of the scene, if you will, from outer space. Okay, looking down on this venue. In a sense, the picture we get from Psalm 133 that was read by, who read it? Jeff, earlier today. Idyllic view of the unity of the body. Now let's hear another story. Families can be toxic. The twins, Romulus and Remus, set out to build a city on 7 hills, and they try to decide which hill to build the city on. One said one hill, the other said the other hill, and the disagreement became rancorous. So they decided, let's seek the will of the gods. And Remus saw 6 birds, that was auspicious, but Romulus saw 12 birds, and he claimed divine approval for the Palatine Hill upon which to build Rome. Well, the disagreement became so rancorous, finally Remus is killed by either Romulus or one of his supporters, and then Romulus goes on to build the city of Rome. There are so many stories like this. When I went looking, there are just multitudes of accounts of family rivalry and family rancor. Let me give you a true parable. Some of you who've had courses with me have already heard this. I like to tell this story. Many years ago, I was on a coastal town having breakfast in California on a wharf right on the water. And I notice about eye level there's a basket right by my side, right on the other side of the window, and it's full of live crabs, and they're crawling all over each other, and there's no lid on the basket. And I wonder how come the crabs don't just sort of crawl over to the side and jump into the water. But they don't. And so I watched for a while. Finally, I asked the waiter, "Explain this to me, what's going on here? You don't have a lid on the basket, all the crabs could escape." And he said, "Yeah, we don't have to worry about that." About the time one of them starts to make a break for it, the others pull him back to the basket. And that story has always stayed with me as a pretty good parable of family conflict in life in the human family or in the church family or the school family. So I want to look for a few minutes at the story of Jacob and Esau as an example of family conflict, and look at some principles about how principles from this story may apply to us as well in our various contexts. Jacob was a scoundrel, no question. His name means something like heel grabber, or he grabs the heel. The one who gets ahead at other people's expense, especially his brother, but not only. From the time he was born, Jacob was a trickster, and one of his nicknames is the Slick Guy. Okay, Mr. Slick, who grabs his brother's heel in the womb so he might get to be born first. He acquired his brother Esau's share of the inheritance, and then cheated Esau out of the patriarchal blessing in the passage that I read. Fleeing from his brother, he bargained with God at Bethel, "If you will provide for me clothing and food and safe travel and bring me home safely, then you get to be my God." Isn't that great? What a deal. In Syria, Jacob finagles through some amazing bit of genetic engineering and animal husbandry I do not understand. He soon has larger flocks than his uncle. When the brothers feel like they have been cheated out of their wealth, he flees from Laban, and then he hears Esau is coming to meet him with 400 warriors. Fearing the worst, he did what any brave patriarch would do. He stayed behind and sent his family on over the river to meet Esau. And it's easy, I think, to be hard on Jacob. After all, he cheated. Many times. He lied, he cheated, put the woolly hair on his arms and did all kinds of things. But Jewish tradition has always judged Esau as the one who lived for the bowl of bread, who lived for his belly. Esau was clearly not qualified to be the bearer of patriarchal blessings and promises. As difficult as it is to justify Jacob's behavior, what if instead of Israelites, they were called Esauites? That doesn't really trip off the tongue very well. But what about Esau? When Jacob had tricked him out of his blessing, he raged against his brother. Is he not rightly named Jacob? He has tricked me these 2 times, and he was not very good at math either, because it was 3, not 2. Wasn't Esau justified in his feelings toward his brother? After all, he's the brunt of his brother's trickiness. Both of them have their share of blame. But their story, I think, illustrates the mysteries of God's choice of people, and it illustrates family conflicts in life together in community. And we're called to be in community even as Jacob and Esau lived in the same family. They didn't pick each other. Every Sunday we take the Lord's Supper, supposed to reaffirm our unity with one another as well as with God. But the confession of unity and the reality are often very different things. Like the family at the reunion seen from outer space, unity is often more a stated fact than it is a reality among family members. The church is also a family. We've been called into the family of God just as surely as Jacob was born into the same family as Esau. We're not given our choice of brothers and sisters in this family. Like Jacob and Esau, we come into the church family with our own difficulties and sins, and we run right into people with difficulties and sins and imperfections. Fill in the blank, you know them. Whatever venue, whatever the gathering of God's people is hard to get along with, right? So-and-so is difficult. I cringe when I think of so-and-so, and I maybe see them coming down the aisle and I find another aisle to walk down. I've done that. Maybe I'm not the only one. Maybe I am. Mrs. Jones doesn't discipline her kids in church. They're little hellions, right? Mr. Smith never helps on work day at church. Mr. Green wants to teach a Bible class, but no one has asked him, and so he may go somewhere else where he will be appreciated. His brilliance may be understood and appreciated. So we suffer, and sometimes suffer in silence and wait for an opportunity to get our way. After all, if we got our way, wouldn't the church be even more blessed because we got our way? The church or family or school can be a place of conflict, full of imperfections, full of people for whom Christ died. Let's go back to Jacob on the other side of the Jordan. That night after he had sent his family ahead to meet up with Esau, a strange man, an angelic man or something, wrestled with Jacob. Neither one is able to get the best of the other all night long. As the sun's about to come up, the man asks Jacob to let him go. Jacob says, "Of course, I will not let you go unless you bless me." But what a blessing the man gave to him. The blessing required that Jacob, Mr. Heel Grabber, change his name. In antiquity, names are windows on the soul. They illustrate and personify the character of the person, intended to be a reflection of that character. So Jacob is blessed, but not before his name and character are changed. Jacob the heel grabber is now Israel, who received the blessing at the cost of a change of character and personal wounds that he leaves that encounter with. They struggled at a place called Peniel, the face of God. When Jacob goes away limping after the fight, he says, when he recognizes that he's been in the presence of the divine somehow, "I've seen the face of God and yet I live." But it is not Jacob, but Israel who goes to meet Esau, moving ahead of his family, and bows down to the ground before him and says to Esau, "Seeing you is like seeing the face of God." Jacob, who stole the blessing from Esau, is now Israel, who freely bestows blessing upon his brother. Well, how finally does this relate to us? I think one of the biggest problems that churches face, families or schools, is conflict among members. We want the blessing that comes with church attendance and fellowship in the body, but brothers and sisters get in the way. They want things in worship or fellowship or education or programs which we may not want. If only we could have our way, then the church would indeed experience the blessing of God. At least that's what the subtext sounds to me like. Maybe the problem is not with the church or Mr. Green or Mrs. Smith or whoever, fill in the blank, but the problem is with ourselves. In order to see the face of God in our brothers and sisters, we too must have our characters changed. In our struggle with God, maybe we need God's gracious wounds. Then maybe we can see the face of God in our brothers and sisters and be givers rather than takers of blessing. Then, like Jacob, we will be at home in the family of God and know that it is there, as in Psalm 133, where blessing is given and received.